the game in the computer. Maybe he's had a word with the coach, and his mind will be ticking. And there we see Pragg opens with the king's pawn.
Yep, so it's the Italian opening, one of the most popular openings of 2022, and both bishops are out now. This tends to lead to a tense, piece-packed position with very few exchanges in the early phase. And, OK, this pawn push is just for Black's dark square bishop to retreat. There are so many different move orders in this opening, Jovanka. It's confusing for even top players, I feel. I know it confuses me, at least, all the different nuances here.
I'm relieved to hear that, David, because I tried to take up this opening, and there were so many move orders, like the knight moves, the pawn moves forward, and so many pieces on the board that I thought, OK, I cannot handle this tension.
Leave it to the experts like Pragg and Anish.
Exactly, because it seemed to me that White wasn't playing the most aggressive moves, but then suddenly, like 20 moves down the line, White has a fantastic position. And you're like, how?
Exactly. I mean, I've been playing this opening my whole career as White, and I still don't understand all the ideas. And these top players, they've worked out all these different plans, these different move orders. I think the reason this is so popular for White, despite the computer not always being impressed, is just because it keeps the tension. And it is Black who often gets impatient and lashes out in the centre and kind of lives to regret that. So White's knight now just stepping out onto a slightly awkward square, but it will reroute itself towards the king side later. And the reason in these types of positions we do say that White has a small advantage, it's a very tiny factor. Let's just jump in to show this. It's a long-term factor, however. It's because this knight, which looks very nicely centralized, is actually dominated by this pawn. Anywhere the the Black knight wants to jump is controlled by this piece. And due to that, White is the one ready to push forward in the center. White is controlling this key square, and Black often struggles to prevent this pawn push. Anish just moving his rook. I'm expecting Pragg either to push this pawn, just to take away the g4 square from Black's knight, Black's bishop, or to play copycat and to move his rook across. And this is very thematic because White's knight wants to retreat and hop next to its fellow here. With knights on these two squares, White often has great attacking potential. But first, he prepares this Praggnanandhaa, and yeah, it's just very difficult for Anish as Black to find a plan in the current position. Black maybe wants to trade off these bishops. Do you go for it now? Can you trade off these bishops on your terms? Black often plays this move. Black often retreats his bishop. Black waits until the tension is resolved, but it's hard psychologically in these types of positions. Yeah. Every piece remaining on the board. Yeah, definitely. And all the pawn breaks still on the board. And there we finally have some clear intentions. Anish wants to trade off the light square bishop. And this is what I was talking about. White often says, no, I don't want to do that, and retreats it to what is a seemingly terrible square. Yeah. But you mark my words, 20 moves down that line, that light square bishop that was sat on a terrible square is going to be a monster. Ah. Yeah, it's going to open up potentially on this diagonal. So first you need to achieve this pawn push. You need 5-10 moves to prepare that. And later on, maybe if there's an exchange of pawns in the center, you push this pawn forward. And suddenly, great diagonal for the bishop to sit on. So you're right, Jovanka, it's all about potential. And talking of potential, Black drops his bishop back because it's on a potential great diagonal itself. And the position is heating up very quickly. Let's jump to the current position. Black was the first to push a pawn in the center just on the last go, pushing this pawn, and White has traded off, meaning that there's an attack against the central pawn. Anish defends against that by recapturing, making sure his rook defends this pawn. And now, although Black has the better pawn structure, Black's pawn in the middle, very strong, holding some key squares, but it is also a weakness, and it ties down much of Black's army. Look at Anish Giri on the camera right now. He has studied this position before, but he's trying to remember what to do. And it's not easy as Black. I think I've seen this position before myself as well, but I wouldn't be able to tell you what I want to do here as Black. Often you want to move the queen, you want to bring your rook to the center. But again, what next? You're a bit stuck. And White, meanwhile, is ready with his knights to jump forward and start an attack. Yeah, I mean, this position definitely feels familiar, but checking the database, I can see only 3 games in this exact position. Yeah, that's the thing. It looks familiar to me as well, but I can't remember what I've studied. I can't remember if it's this position. Maybe in that position, Black's the one that I've studied. Maybe Black's bishop was on a different square. Maybe that's a big difference. Yeah, it's so hard, even for the top grandmasters like Anish Giri, opening experts like him, yeah, to figure out all the different concepts. And he does indeed move his queen, getting ready to improve his worst piece, that is the rook. Once Black's rook centralizes, most problems are solved. And it's not too scary right now for the white knight to step forward, because the black queen might retreat. Losing a move, yes, but the knight now would simply be attacked, losing some time for white as well. Yeah, Pragg with 16 minutes. What will he do to try and put Giri under some pressure? White's pieces don't look too impressive right now. They don't look too active, so at some point you will want to break out. It's all about getting these bishops into the game. It still takes a while, but you need to find a way.
And one way or another, there's now still only 3 games on the database. But this time, they've kind of transposed to a game that was played between Wesley So and Alexander Grishuk in a rapid tournament there. And Wesley approached this position by trading off the dark squared bishops. And he wanted to put pressure on Black's potentially weak e5 pawn.
Yeah, so trading off these pieces makes sense. Black's bishop was, from long range, putting some serious pressure on the white king side. So if you trade these off, then, yeah, as you mentioned, Jovanka, white's queen is going to step to this square. For example, like this, the white rook is going to slide behind, and the 3 heavy pieces are going to gang up against black's central pawn. So some serious pressure. And I think that might have been on the tour from last season. That game, it looks familiar. I've seen that game before between Wesley So and Anish Giri. I'm not sure whether it was that tournament or another, but either way, some pedigree. And if it's been played by opening experts like Grishuk and Wesley So, then it means that the players are following something worth following, essentially.
But who knows if it will be one of the very best games from the 2022 season. There is a vote going on, you guys. Our experts across all the Chess24 streams have nominated their favorite games from the 2022 season. And now it's up to all of you to vote for your favorite. There will be one game receiving an award for being the best game of the 2022 season. What games did you guys nominate?
Ooh, one of them was by Praggnanandhaa. I nominated a game between Praggnanandhaa and Jordan van Foreest, where Pragg, I think we saw a clip earlier, I described it as one of the best games I've ever seen. Pragg shocked me with some rook sacrifices. It looked like he was going for the king, then suddenly switched his blade to the other side of the board. There were forks, there were pins, there were double attacks, skewers, everything. But also a game by Mamedyarov.
Yeah.
He's a magician.
And since David took the 2 of my 2 favourites, I actually picked one between Erigaisi and Liam Lei, because it was massively complicated, such a crazy game. And Erigaisi was just playing phenomenal chess and sacrificing some pawns with check. And it's well worth a playthrough.
Wow. And yeah, on chess24.com/tour, you can cast your vote and also look through these games. We've made videos with recaps of these fantastic games from the season. So take a look at that and cast your vote. Now this one, the bar is roughly in the middle. Does it have potential to be one of those games that you just remember?
It could well be, especially when someone like Pragg is in charge of the white pieces. Look at what he's doing. Those white knights, they've gone to slightly weird squares, but they're about to hop back towards the centre to try and create some attacks. Pragg looks so focused. It's like he's trying to jump into his computer screen here. He's determined not just to sit on his 1-point advantage in the match today. He wants to go for broke. He wants to go all in and double up his advantage.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, what do you think of this, Jovanka? Those 2 white knights on the edge of the board now?
They're on the edge of the board, but they have a purpose. And they're definitely going to... One of them is going to sit on the f5 square and put pressure on the black position. I also quite like the idea of trading off the dark square bishop and...
Goes for it.
Goes for it. Just as I say, I really do feel like I've won a little bingo or a jackpot when the players play the move that I suggest. So I like this option.
Yeah, and very logical as well.
Yeah.
Swapping off an undeveloped piece previously for black's long-range bishop.
And whilst Anish is thinking about a plan, well, we do have a caption this competition.
Yes.
And we've asked you guys at home to caption this very cool picture of David and Simon. And Arbel Gideon says, the bishops have traded off. Are we going to get the picture of the Arbel Gideon? There you go. He says, every group project there's David, has no idea what's going on the whole time. Simon does 99% of the work. Yeah.
Always that one person in the group. Yes.
The naughty kid.
Yes.
Oh, that's me.
And there we see the pawn step forward to guard the f5 square. And whilst there's another pause in the game, we also see another entry from Kelvin, who shares with us a picture of Simon and David and says, wait for it, it's quite good.
Oh, I love that.
It's worth the wait. There you go. How to wait for Harry, the H-pawn, to be pushed.
It's always worth the wait. It's always.
And I love how Simon he looks so...
Like calm, like
yeah, or even a little annoyed. This is my camera, David. Come on.
No, I mean he's saying, "Oh, Harry gets pushed every game anyway," and I'm like, "Whoa, what a move!" Oh, I miss Simon.
Yeah.
But, okay. Meanwhile, it's pretty much going according to the plan we outlined earlier. Just white tripling up on the e-file. Black's pawn in the middle of the board now for Anish is under threat. It is attacked twice. It's only defended once. I just love this. It's almost an Alekine's gun when tripled pieces, the rooks and queens, the heavy pieces, they're all lined up on the same file. Normally it's 2 rooks at the front and then the queen kind of pushes from behind, supports from behind. But here, white's queen is going to be sandwiched between its 2 rooks when white's rook in the corner slides behind her. But yeah, it's going to be really hard for Anish Giri to deal with that pressure. I'm a bit surprised with how he's set up, actually. Black's knight now in the middle of the board, blocking the black rook on the e-file. Doesn't make a great impression.
It certainly doesn't make a great impression. I mean, if he wants to hold on to that pawn, he's going to have to move that knight one more time again, perhaps to where it came from. Although maybe that one doesn't even work, I actually just realised.
Yeah, it doesn't look great for Anish. I've got to say, the evaluation bar still not impressed, still smack bang in the middle, but is white about to win a pawn? Maybe Anish Giri. Does he have to sacrifice his pawn in the middle and go active? Again, that's not necessarily his style. He's reluctant to sacrifice in general, and there we go, the knight moves back. But it just came from there 3 moves ago. Black's knight moved away from the square, went back, and Anish has lost valuable time, and that's why the evaluation bar goes in white's favour. I think he had to be active there, Jovanka. I think, OK, nice shoes, but he's shaking his foot. That's a sign of nerves from Anish Giri. And it's a sign of nerves because he's just lost 2 tempi, as we say. And yeah, there we go. Very logical. Pragg doesn't even need to think, doesn't need to calculate. Just play on instinct, improve your worst placed piece. It's good chess strategy when there's nothing to be done. No fireworks to try and understand. Just improve your pieces.
Yeah. And it does feel like things are going to be heating up within the next few moves, especially along the E line, as you mentioned. I mean, now it's all about opening that line in the best way possible.
Yeah. So the question is, can you open it now? Do you have to wait a moment or two? How does white improve now? Because the white knights look pretty decent. White's bishop struggles to improve itself. White's heavy pieces, the rooks and queens, they look great. So what next for Pragg? Has he maximised the potential of his position already, or are there other ways forward? I know what Magnus Carlsen would do here. He would start pushing some pawns. He loves pushing pawns, gaining space. So if Magnus were in Pragg's shoes, I'm pretty sure we would see one of these 2 pawns push forward. Magnus, this is his trademark, essentially, to gain space on all sides of the board. I was going to say maybe this pawn first, but you have to be slightly careful that Black could grab this lone ranger on A2. Maybe you could push the other pawn forward first. The whole idea here, for example, if Black waits, I'm not sure how, the whole idea is to push the pawns forward together in tandem, just to undermine this black knight. If you can undermine this knight, then suddenly the pawn in the centre on E5 will drop off the board. So to me, this looks logical. What else could we stumble across here? You mentioned, Jovanka, trying to open up the centre. I mean, one thing you could calculate is whether you could play this pawn push. I don't think you can right now, but I was just trying to look for some tactics. For example, the reason Pragg could calculate this is because you could dream potentially of sacrificing. The reason this doesn't work is because Black's king has a choice of 2 squares. You've given up here a queen for rook and knight, but if you choose the wrong square with Black, then suddenly White's knight jumps into the game with a double attack, with a fork. It might be captured, but the other knight replaces it, and white would win material. The downside here, unfortunately, is that black's king does have 2 squares, and it can run to the side of the board. No checks, and it's safe. But already it's nearly working for Pragg.
Yeah, it is almost working, and in the original position, I mean, the other move to kind of calculate is whether a knight can just plonk itself on the f5 square and sacrifice galore.
Yeah, this is similar to what Giri did against Pragg in the last game. Sacrifice a knight and then try and figure out what to do later.
Yeah, and the problem is that you shouldn't just sacrifice the knight just like that and trying to figure out. You have to have the backup there.
Yeah,
and it doesn't work, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's because the black queen can jump back and defend her pawn, and black's king will just hide out in the corner. It will hide it on h8, and it should be safe. So Pragg just retreats. The game will take a calmer. What's the word for it?
Route?
Route, yeah. It's just got a calmer nature right now due to this retreat. No attack yet, but he is attacking a pawn.
Yeah, and we'll take the route to San Francisco. We know there are 4 great chess players. International master, our roving reporter Tanya is there. And are there any VIP guests in the building today, Tanya?
Yes, Kaya, I'm here with a very special guest. He's a Chessable author, a very popular streamer, international master. Kostya Kavitsky is joining us. Hey, Kostya.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks.
It's going well, but you tell us, are you excited to have the finals in your city?
Yeah, super excited. I know you guys are worldwide, and I've been in San Francisco for many years. I played a lot of events here, and yeah, I mean, it's so great to see such a big event here.
And you're a streamer yourself. What does it mean to you to see chess evolve into this e-sport?
It's amazing. Yeah, I think people don't realize chess and the chess world has really changed in the last 5 years, like dramatically. It's a completely different game now. Everything is shifting online. I still love all the OTB events. Hopefully those don't go anywhere, but all the online action, the interest is really, I think it's great for the game.
Apart from you, who's your favorite chess streamer?
Oh, my favorite streamer. Oh, that it will be on the spot. I have a lot of friends in the world. I'm a big fan of Eric Rosen, John Bartholomew. Of course, I like all the big streamers. Maybe those are my top 2.
We see a very different side of Magnus when he's streaming. What do you think about that?
Oh, it's great. Yeah, he has fun. You know, he lets loose. I think we've never had a world champion that was like so, kind of open with the public. So I think that's amazing. I think the fans absolutely love that. I wish Magnus would stream more. Actually, is that happening? Do you know?
Well, he's not playing the World Championship anymore, so maybe we might see him stream more. But Kostya, I have to ask you, you've got these 2 big courses on Chessable. One of them is on endgames. And Magnus, in fact, is one of the players, arguably one of the best endgame players. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. One of the best endgame players of all time. I'd be happy to talk about the course a little bit. That's okay. It's on endgame studies, which I'm sure you've solved and many players have solved that are very difficult and tricky. And essentially, I just wanted to make an introductory course for endgame studies so players can learn like how to solve some of these like trickier like endgame tactics, endgame puzzles, and learn how to like calculate a little bit deeper in the endgame.
And I feel endgame is one of those parts of the game that we often tend to not look into that much, but it's such a crucial part, and you can win so many points if you're good at it.
Yeah, absolutely. In some parts of the world, they teach the endgame first, right? That's like how you actually learn to play the game. You got to learn to use your king and use your pawns, and then slowly you like figure out the rest of the game. But yeah, chess is so complicated, and I think no amount of the benefit to studying the endgame. I think no limit.
Your other big course is about converting winning advantages. One of the toughest things to do in chess is to win a winning game. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest issues in chess. I certainly struggle with it. People can look at my games to see tons of missed wins, missed opportunities. So yeah, the idea with that course there was to give folks kind of some strategies, try to convert the position, things like the principle of 2 weaknesses and how to make the right exchanges, how to convert to an end game that you can win, and how to close out points, right, without giving away the draw.
Such a big part of the game. And who do you think does it best? Who's got that killer instinct?
Oh, well, Magnus for sure. I think some of the best technique of all time. Smyslov famously said, I'm going to make 40 good moves, and if my opponent also makes 40 good moves, we'll make a draw. And I think Magnus has doubled that number to 80. I think it's 80 moves now. You got to play against him to hold.
Awesome. And finally, who are you rooting for here at the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour final?
Praggnanandhaa, 100%. He's just like an underdog. He's a kid. He's so good. I mean, I like all the players here. You know, Magnus, Giri, Wesley, but Pragg is amazing. So it'd be cool to see him win.
I love it. I'm going to high five you on that one. All right. Thanks, Kostya.
We have some Pragg fans in the building and some great chess players as well. I love that. Some chessable courses that we all definitely should check out. Endgame Studies 101. That sounds cool, actually, to study the endgame with Kostya. All right, no way near the endgame in this game yet, I guess. But is it heating up?
It is heating up, and Anish Giri's just set a really sneaky trap for Praggnanandhaa to fall into. I think I would have been very tempted to fall into this, especially in a blitz game. But if you get greedy now with white and capture a pawn, you lose on the spot.
Ooh.
And it looks like you're ganged up on this pawn. You're attacking it once, twice, also with the rook and queen. So you're attacking this pawn 4 times.
Ooh.
It's only defended 3 times. So you could take it, but after a capture, you have to do some counting here. This is 1 capture, 2 captures, 3 captures, 4, 5. But just at the end, black doesn't take back because this would lead to an endgame. Kostya would show you that this is winning for white. You're a pawn up. But unfortunately for white, here, this capture is not forced. First, black can flick in a really sneaky skewer, hitting the queen and the rook behind. And the whole idea is that after queen takes queen, black doesn't recapture yet. You flick in a check, and only after this check, winning a rook, after the king moves, then do you take the white queen. You've won a rook in the process. So this is 7, I think 6, 7 moves deep. It's quite easy to calculate because it's just every move being a capture, every move being forced. But that's why maybe Pragg has his head in his hands. He realized that his whole idea to win this pawn doesn't work. So that's really sneaky from Giri. It's as if he knows what Pragg wants to do, and he's trying to tempt him into it.
So how far down on ratings would you have to go for someone in a competition, a tournament, to fall into that trap?
I think even some quite strong players, even around the 2000 level club players, tournament players, could fall into this. I think in a long game, you would sit there and calculate, so it would be quite rare. But I mean, we've even seen grandmasters blunder in classical games, maybe similar ideas to this. I remember when I was young, even after reaching 2000, I would blunder into these types of things occasionally. But OK, look at what Pragg has done. Remember that variation where right at the end, black had rook takes rook, and it was hitting the king with check. So that was in a 6-7 move calculation. At the end, there was a nasty check. So Pragg has seen that variation, and he's like, OK, I want to play that, but first I'm going to get my king out of check. So that's what we call prophylaxis in chess, like seeing the future, seeing exactly what is about to happen. And if it doesn't work in your favor, you prepare for that. So you can't play the critical variation right now. You couldn't take this pawn, but now it is a threat. For example, now if black wastes a move, now you can capture, because again, after all these trades, remember this variation we saw earlier, this doesn't work for black, because after queen takes queen, rook takes rook is not a check. So you can take a rook, but white has time to save his queen. So this is really deep stuff, really sophisticated, really classy play from both sides. But with this weird-looking king move, on its own, it makes a weird impression, but it does create a direct threat of knight takes pawn. I think Giri now has to deal with this threat either by eliminating the knight, stopping that capture, or by dropping back and defending the pawn one more time. Wow.
Yeah. To be fair to you, sorry, not to be fair to you. I was just thinking that the bishop can take the knight. I think it's more or less forced, because if the knight were to retreat, then there are consequences to that. The knight was protecting the rook, and now my idea of perhaps pushing in the centre, it becomes very viable.
Yeah, as you say, this is a pin, and black's rook would not be defended sufficiently if black takes with the e-pawn. So it looks like process of elimination. You're right, Jovanka. Just why not eliminate this knight? Ideally, you don't want to give up a bishop for a knight in a semi-open position, but sometimes needs must. Yeah. Has to be done.
Yeah, and if that bishop does leave the board, guess who's going to become an amazing piece?
The sleeping giant.
That damn thing.
Yeah.
Sitting there on c2, that was such a bad piece. Suddenly it moves, as Dave is highlighting.
Yeah, it's going to wake up and really maybe decide the game. Suddenly, I would feel a bit uncomfortable as black, I've got to be honest, because this black king doesn't have too many defenders around it. There's still potential of some sacrifices, some knight jumps to open up the king later on. So Giri's not out of danger, despite what the evaluation bar says. Yeah, it's just really tense. It's as if both sides are kind of testing each other just with these small little ideas, saying, OK, I dare you to take my knight. I dare you to commit. I dare you to set this trap for me. It's just that type of chess. It's really cagey.
It is very cagey and tense, and it's very difficult to handle psychologically. You feel a lot of pressure considering every single possibility. So this is why we see Anish thinking very, very hard. And whilst Anish is considering his moves, well, maybe we could be like a Dear Deirdre for one of our viewers. Dear Deirdre is like an agony aunt. And Rockstar asks us, what if your partner doesn't understand your love for chess? As I find my real-life queen is as commanding as the chess queen, how to handle?
How do I say this without getting into trouble? You just got to embrace their lack of passion for chess. Sometimes you can't share everything, and yeah, it's not easy to instill that love in chess in everyone. So yeah, I try to let it slide. I'm sure your partner has something that you don't understand as well. So yeah, how about you, Kaya, Jovanka?
Well,
I don't really
chess,
have
right?
this problem, so I'll leave it up to you guys.
Well, I kind of think that you can introduce chess, but as a social thing.
But you married a chess player.
I
as
know,
well, right?
I know. So I don't really have that kind of problem.
Yeah.
But I do feel that it is possible to get people interested into the game. You know, not if you're sat there teaching them, more or less if you're just letting them play and you just kind of get all the friends together, you know, bash it out. And then you'll find out that everyone, if they're allowed to talk, if they're allowed to just have fun, then it will be just incredibly enjoyable. Because after all, most people enjoy board games, and I don't see why chess can't be like treated like that in a social aspect with fun, conversation, laughter.
Yeah. And I mean, like in many other sports, there are a bunch of chess couples. Anish Giri is an example, married to another great chess player. But traveling around with chess, I have asked chess players from time to time, you know, if they would prefer a girlfriend or a boyfriend, which is a chess player or not. And some of them will answer, definitely not a chess player. I need someone I can talk to about other things than chess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mixed blessing if both partners are chess players, because how do you escape from the game? Sometimes you need to switch off. I've known chess couples where they're both so competitive, if one of them loses their game, they won't talk to the other. They'll sometimes kick the other one out of the room, being like, no, I need to be alone. I need to analyse this game. I need my peace and quiet to study. But yeah, if it's a non-chess player, at least you can somehow get your mind off the game. It's easier to relax, talk about other things, talk about other interests. But yeah, I guess there's something to be said for having a similar lifestyle and this shared passion.
Yeah. But I mean, I also discussing with one of my friends, she said the best relationship she'd ever had was with a non-chess player. And, you know, he would turn up at the tournaments and he would go, wow, what an awesome thing. And he would say, you can still win the tournament, even though she had no chance whatsoever. He said, no, you can still do it, go for it. And she said it was the best time of her life.
Yeah. So embrace it is basically our answer to the Twitter question. Just embrace it and enjoy the positives of being together with a non-chess player. We have a bunch of moves on the board.
Yeah, I was going to say, unless they say it's just a game, and then get rid of them, get rid of them. It's more than just a game. But yeah, a bunch of moves on the board, and again, similar. It's going down a similar vein to what we discussed earlier. Black had to get rid of that white knight, had to part with his bishop. Unfortunately, that was the only way to deal with the pressure on Black's central pawn there on e5, and that has happened. And meanwhile, a couple of maneuvering ideas. I'm slightly surprised that Anish has planted the black queen on the e-file, where it is stared down by one of the white rooks. But I think we'll see Anish's idea in action maybe now or on the next turn. Black's queen wants to relocate itself nearer the white king, just to cover some squares, maybe to protect the black king as well. Meanwhile, the bishop has woken up, Jovanka. How funny would it be if you called it just 20 moves ago? That white bishop, which stepped to an ugly passive square, might decide the game long term.
It always does.
Bobby Fischer's favourite piece, that light squared bishop for white.
Yeah, I remember you telling me this, actually. I think you helped me out and you said, well, you know, it's actually the light square bishop, despite appearances, is often better than its counterpart.
Yeah, I don't know why it's always the light squared bishop. Maybe it's because in the Spanish opening, Italian opening, it's always that bishop which is preserved, which is kept for later in the game. But it's always the light squared bishop that does the damage for some reason. It's very rarely the dark squared bishop against the knight. You very rarely like that combo for white. It's hard to say why, but statistically it is proven to be a better piece. And I'm just reading some of the tweets there, some of the captions. Keep them coming, keep the answers coming, keep the agony aunt questions coming. Yeah. We can solve all your life problems, chess partner or not. And Anish Giri going for trade of queens. The king's partner is about to leave the board. Maybe the queens are going to get traded off and we'll head towards a quieter endgame. But favours Pragg, apparently.
Yeah.
That might be because after white takes the black queen, black's pawn structure will be compromised. Black will have doubled pawns. So a bit of a passive decision from Anish Giri, not the most active choice.
Isn't there a critical moment already? Because I'm just thinking, if everything gets traded off, then there are some pieces that are standing on awkward squares.
Yeah, and I was actually going to say maybe there's a trick in the position. I don't think it quite works, but it's very similar to what Wesley So did against Magnus yesterday. Yes, you can take the queen, it's probably the best move, but you could also maybe be a bit sneaky, throw in a check. I don't think this will work because black won't take this piece. Black's king can just move. For example, it can step back and the knight is attacked. But the whole idea is that if pawn takes knight, maybe against a weaker player this would work. Suddenly the white rook would slide across with a nasty pin. But your variations on the board, Jovanka, this one would be winning for white, but black doesn't need to take the bait. Instead, keep things simple. Queen takes queen, and this is the move you were expecting?
Yeah, I thought there was going to be another trade, actually.
OK, another exchange first. Bishop takes knight.
Yeah, and then then move the knight. So the whole idea is you attack the pawn, and also you threaten to put the knight on the f6 square, forking the two rooks.
Yeah, this is very tempting as well, maybe also equally strong. But he's attached to his light-squared bishop, as we've learnt. Praggnanandhaa, instead of trading off, which might have just won a pawn, he brings his knight to the centre. Similar idea, but this was met with Anish Giri keeping his knight alive, attacking this pawn in counter. And, OK, the question for white is, can you continue your plan? If you take a time out to defend this pawn, you could do this, for example, by moving the knight. This looks pretty decent as well. You defend this pawn, you attack this guy on the edge of the board. But the most direct move, the first move you should calculate in any position, is always the most critical. It's always a check or capture or that type of move. This wins the pawn, and you attack this guy. Black would be forced... OK, this has happened. Black would be forced to move this pawn. I think this is what we'll see Anish do, push this pawn forward. And the question is, do you have to retreat this knight? If you retreat, black does have the time, the luxury now of taking this pawn back, maybe with his own rook or with his knight. And this is getting complicated. I'm struggling to see how Pragg in this position, this is the current position, how he keeps both his knight alive and this pawn alive. Can you see it, Jovanka?
I'm thinking that maybe you can attack the knight. But
counterattack.
Yeah, it's just because Pragg is the master of counterattacks. I mean, there is one big trick on the board, which is if the rook takes the pawn.
This rook.
Yeah, you are allowed to go rook takes knight.
Yeah, rook takes knight would utilise the fact that there's a pin on the e-file. For example, after pawn takes, we'll see a bunch of exchanges, but at the end, probably white has a small advantage because the bishop will be superior to the knight with pawns on both sides of the board. This one is getting very complicated now. Maybe we'll see a retreat from Pragg. This is fine, but Giri will regain the pawn. We're expecting something, just because we know Pragg so well, we're expecting something a bit more flashy.
Yeah, so this is why I was thinking the knight can jump forward.
OK, wow. Into
no man's land. I know, and it's just based on one cheapo, which is if the rook comes to take the pawn, now you can take the knight.
Now you would win a piece, yeah?
Yeah.
Because at the end, undefended.
But I might have sacrificed my kingdom for a horse. Because, of course, you know, he's not obliged to capture the pawn.
Yeah, but how does he save his rook? Because he has to stay defending its fellow here. But now, suddenly, I mean, there's a lot of tempting moves. But, for example, you could push forward in the middle of the board. I was going to say, maybe you could push this pawn forward as well, but then now this is the downside. You might get your knight trapped. There's no way back and no way to escape for this knight at all, actually. But he plays it. He's really taking his life into his own hands here, Praggnanandhaa. He's gone in, he's a pawn up, he's setting traps for the opponent. He's hitting this rook. And Anish Giri, he has to be very accurate here. Otherwise, white is just going to emerge with a winning advantage. You've given up a pawn as Anish Giri, not for the first time in this match today, and you need to justify it. Wow. I mean, I admire Pragg as well. If I'm a point ahead in a match, I just want to play it safe, but he's not. I mean, he's showing zero fear. He's just not afraid of going all out, even at the cost of potentially trapping his own knight. What a game. And, OK, Giri does indeed shift his rook across. He needed to keep the rooks intact with each other. And, yes, he does push this pawn forward. So he's trying to break his knight out of jail by getting rid of this pawn, maybe creating an escape route there, but also undermining the defender of this black knight.
That's a great move by Pragg. I mean, the knight sitting there on f7, it's going to get out.
You think it's going to escape?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. The evaluation bar still says roughly level, but this is anything but drawish. This is anything but boring. This is maybe one of the most complicated endgames you'll see in a while.
Wow. This is the kind of position where Pragg will be thinking, yeah, I have the upper hand, I'm going to win. And Anish is probably thinking, hey, I'm in big trouble. And when you finish the game, you put it on the computer goes, slight advantage.
Yeah, exactly. You might think you've played the perfect game. You know, Pragg's, he might come out, he might say, oh, I've played a masterpiece. And then, oh, yeah, it was a couple of small mistakes here, bigger mistake here. That's always the way the computer works. But we just have to calculate as humanly as we can and as accurately as we can. And here, 2 minutes against 2 minutes. The one thing I will say about the clock is, under time pressure, Pragg is very calm, very composed. Giri, he did well in the Blitz tiebreak yesterday. He beat Liam there, but he has panicked throughout the season on the tour under time pressure. So, okay, will history repeat itself there?
This is something that the Indian kids are fantastic at. They're fantastic with playing with no time on the clock. I mean, they play bullet and like something called hyper bullet, where they're playing with 30 seconds on the clock, and they're playing great games as well. And they do this on a very regular basis.
Wow!
But it's not great for your chess, I have to say. But these guys are just fantastic. They calculate also so quickly. They've been training on calculation and seeing all over, improving all over the board vision since they were tiny.
Wow.
Yeah, and Giri needs to use his full board vision here just to whip up some counterplay. I'm struggling to see what he can try. I mean, the first move that came to my mind was using the black knight on c6 and going to the edge of the board to try and attack white's light square bishop. White's bishop holds the whole position together. White's bishop defends his knight. If the white bishop falls, white's position is done. It just, it's like dominoes, it will just collapse. But white's bishop can kind of hide and tuck itself away anytime it's attacked. And I don't really see a follow-up. It's getting very sharp, and Giri's under 1 minute. I think this might be the critical moment of the whole game. If Giri doesn't find a really clever plan now, which I'm struggling to see, then he's just toast. He's a pawn down with a bad position.
OK, David, I cheated. Only one move, according to my computer, that says that maintains the balance. And that is the knight sitting on c6 has to attack the bishop. Yeah. And then only after that attack can he trade pawns in the centre.
Wow, and that would come with a piece sacrifice. OK, let's wait. Let's see what Giri does. 10 seconds now.
10 seconds!
He has to move his knight to the edge of the board, so the black knight has to go to the a5 square. Anything else?
Is he aware of the clock? Has he lost track of time?
Oh, he finds the best move.
It.
He had 3 seconds when he played this one. But it's not just this move. OK, the evaluation bar will recorrect itself, we think. But it's not just this move. The next one is maybe even harder, I feel. You mentioned the white bishop is just going to move. It's going to retreat, keep itself safe. Pragg should play that instantly because he doesn't really have too many other options. And after that, we will see the true test of Giri's character, of his nerves. OK, the bishop does step back, and he plays the best move instantly, Anish Giri. He was calculating deeply. The reason this is so hard to work out is just because black's knight now, the knight on f4 on the right half of the board, is undefended. So we're expecting a trade of rooks in the centre on the e-file. That tension is unbearable. You have to trade off a set of rooks, and suddenly black's knight will fall. But, OK, we see this variation happen instantly. Rooks have disappeared. Black's knight did disappear as well. And after pawn takes pawn, the whole point of the variation will become clear. If this black pawn, which is threatening to promote, actually, in a couple of moves, if it is captured, And I think we'll see this on the board. Maybe we should show it as well, because black has given up a whole piece, Anish, Giri. This is a better piece sacrifice than the last game, at least. But right now, we need to show why he has done this, and that is because after pawn takes pawn, you can't let this pawn live. Suddenly, rook down to the second rank. And look at this bishop. How does it keep itself safe while continuing to protect its knight? It doesn't have too many squares. If it retreats, for example, the knight drops, and Giri is safe. If it moves forward, the only safe square on the diagonal is this one. It gets hit. And we do see this position on the board. Suddenly, the bishop is attacked, and one of these two pieces is about to fall. But it goes on, actually. It gets complicated. The bishop can retreat, attacking the rook. I think this is what Giri had spotted. Maybe the rook just moves, and the knight is trapped.
The knight is trapped, but still,
Wow.
it kind of continues. I mean, this line is just so complicated.
This is extremely complicated. So Anish Giri, he went down to 3 seconds, but I think he'd seen 6 or 7 moves in advance for both sides. So extremely impressive calculation to see all that time ago that this knight is trapped. No way to defend it, no way home. And yeah, I think we might see Giri save himself, or at least get to an endgame that might be holdable. If he didn't find this variation, he could have just resigned, essentially, Anish Giri. So he's found the best bet, even if the computer thinks white still has a small chance. And, OK, Pragg didn't go for this because the knight would have been trapped. Instead, he knew one of these two pieces is dropping, so he gives up his bishop. Now, if the bishop is captured, the white knight will retreat, and white has won a pawn in the process. This does happen on the board. The problem for white is these two pawns aren't of great quality. They're isolated, very weak, easy to attack for the black rook.
Yeah. I actually feel that black has very good compensation just on account of those two weak pawns. And there we see Anish just give an opening to his king.
Yeah. If the king gets into the centre of the board, it would actually double attack against the rook and knight together, and it would win a piece. So, yeah, if anything, I think I might even take black.
I would take black as well. I mean, it's just an easy plan. Attack the pawns on the left.
Yeah.
Nothing more sophisticated than that. Meanwhile, take a look at white's pawns there on the right. They're going to take a while to get mobilised. So I think this is great stuff from Praggnanandhaa. He's trying to eliminate his weaknesses. And his rook, perfectly safe. You always have to worry a little bit when the rook is offside.
Yep, and after this exchange, the one thing that Pragg has to be careful of now is the knights are notoriously bad at stopping rook's pawns, stopping A and H pawns. So this one will start running at some point, and white's knight will not be doing a great job, even if rooks come off the board, of stopping this pawn. So Giri still has some small chances of not only holding this game, but trying to win it as well. 30 seconds against 1 minute. Pragg here, I think he would take the draw at this point. I think white just needs to be a bit careful. He pushes forward. He is attacking this black knight, but Giri says, no, I'm retreating. Knights are great blockaders, and white's pawn is well guarded. Yeah, tense endgame, but things are disappearing. Pieces are getting traded off. Most likely result, Jovanka?
Draw.
Draw. I agree. And that would suit Pragg, but it's been a roller coaster game. He did put Giri under pressure significantly.
He did. Anish really had to play very well, find some resourceful moves with seconds left on the clock. And there we see a trade of pawns. The more trades that we see, the more they're closer Anish gets to getting that draw.
Yeah, exactly. We said maybe we would choose black, but at this point, I think both sides have reason to be content. And yeah, both sides are around 40 seconds. That should be enough. There shouldn't be too many complicated tactics yet in the foreseeable future. So yeah, this one should fizzle out now. Okay, black's knight in the centre. Looks well placed, but a bit loose. I'm expecting at some point Pragg to bring the white king closer to the middle of the board. White's king does look a bit vulnerable to some checks. On the second rank, it doesn't feel happy at all. And
yeah, I agree. Just step the king forward, protect its pawns, and then this allows the rook to now just swing over to the left side and start attacking some pawns.
Yeah, white's rook's a bit tied down, freed up.
Exactly. And also bear in mind that the black king is still a little bit shaky, and Pragg down to seconds left on the clock. And there he go. He moves his king forward.
Yeah. Good endgame strategy. When in doubt, if you don't know how to improve your pieces, centralise the king. And white's king does a great job of supporting its pawns. This pawn, however, the white c pawn, is attacked now by black. And, OK, a check from Praggnanandhaa. Yeah, you mentioned the black king. It's kind of stuck on the edge there. It's not quite in a mating net, but it doesn't have too many safe squares to run to. Black's king, white gives a couple of checks. He's going to centralize his knight eventually, I feel. There we go. Gaining time. Pragg can repeat the position now. If he's nervous, under 20 seconds, he can repeat, bail out with the draw by bringing his knight back to the top of the board. That's the second time we will have seen that position. I don't think Giri would be too reluctant to agree to that draw now. Will we see this from Pragg? Do you think he's going to keep going?
Yeah, of course he's going to keep going. It's Pragg. He's calm under pressure. And there you see there is the switchback. I mean, he's gone to attack the A-pawn. So we're just going to see a trade of pawns in effect.
Yep. And again, disappearing pawns means that the game is headed towards that dreaded draw. But at this point, that would be a logical result. I think Anish Giri will eliminate the white c-pawn. It's too dangerous. You could give a check with the black rook on the third rank first, or you could go and take that pawn and then give a check maybe next move. White's knight still needs a while to get back into the centre, so I don't think there's time for white to profit from the 2 versus 1 pawn advantage on the right half of the board. Yep, this one is destined to be a draw, barring anything really shocking at this point. He gives a check first, asking a question of the white king.
We did see a few minutes ago, Wesley So walked past and took a look at this game. He has finished game 2, and it's a bad result for Wesley So. He lost game 2 against Liam Le. First game was a draw, so he is now down in that match. Wesley So playing from the San Francisco arena. It's looking great for Jan Christoph Duda in game 2 against Mamdjarov, and for Magnus Carlsen, he could go up by 2 points against Arjun Erigaisi here in game 2. This one looks like a draw then.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Two
say
pawns
this.
against 2 pawns now.
It is 2 pawns against 2 pawns, but I have to say, I would feel nervous with the white king being so close to the black king.
Nervous for who? Is the white king going to do the checkmating, or is it going to get checkmated?
That white king feels like a hunter to me. And, well, Anish playing very accurately, mobilizing his king, and he should be out of danger. Although I say this, but I'm still very nervous.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jovanka, actually. Black has to be slightly careful. I'm now expecting white's rook maybe even to go to the 6th rank. We don't see that. He offers a trade of knights, first of all. If the knights disappear now, then the white king is perfectly placed, actually.
Yeah.
Black's remaining pawn, that g6 pawn, incredibly weak. And in a rook endgame alone, suddenly black's a pawn, not a factor. Those rook's pawns, a and h pawns, are terrible in rook endgames. Wow, yeah, Pragg putting Giri under some pressure still. He's just so good. At 17 years old, Praggnanandhaa. I mean, I would have bailed out with a draw. I would have said, OK, it was enough excitement for today. But no, he keeps looking for chances, and he's so often rewarded.
Yeah.
OK, black's knight not going for that exchange. I think that's a wise decision from Giri. A knight exchange, and white's king and rook would have been more active than their counterparts. But now a check. Is white in time to pick off the black pawns before white's pawns fall? Black's knight is attacking as well. In the centre, vulnerable, this black king.
It is definitely vulnerable, and there we see the rook swing across. You know, white is getting ready to play f4 check. This is getting very, very dangerous now for Anish.
Yeah, and Anish holding things together. He moves his rook back. He is threatening now for the black rook to come and take the pawn behind the white king, distracting the white king away from the defence of the white rook. So Giri setting traps just like he did a bit earlier in the game. Actually, both sides have reason to be optimistic here.
Seconds.
Yeah, it's Pragg low on the clock, though. He went down to 5 seconds there, keeping his rook on a safe square. And black's knight retreating. Finally, it does feel like Giri's got nice kind of coordination with his pieces.
Ooh. But hang on a second. This move perhaps wasn't the most accurate. I mean, is there any knight checks?
Yeah, black's knight can go to the h3 square, drop behind, as it has just done, hitting the white king. If the white king had stepped forward and taken the black pawn, black's rook would have swung across and taken the pawn too. Black's knight has to retreat, otherwise it was trapped. I'm surprised we're still commentating on this game, to be honest, because I thought it would fizzle out to a draw, but both players are actually testing each other. Wow. This is really impressive endgame play. The balance hasn't been disturbed. The status quo has never really shifted either way, but just high-quality chess from both of them. Both of them really want to win this one. And Pragg still trying his best, defending his pawns now. 20 seconds against 30 seconds.
Both sides kind of gambling, I think, because Pragg has kind of put his king in a very awkward position, and it feels like it could almost be checkmated at the right time. And here comes the A-pawn.
Yeah, don't forget about Alice. She is running down the board. But first of all, I'm expecting the black pieces to do a bit of a shuffle. OK, no, he doesn't move his pieces. Black's formation, can it be undermined? Can White's knight give a check to the black king now? Can White's rook check the black king away? That black pawn is actually scary. It's only 3 moves away. No defenders around it. This is a check. Black's king has a choice of 2 safe squares.
Takes a
Retreats.
step back. This is a smart move.
Wow.
And then he goes to the edge of the board in order to threaten the pawn on g6. It's brave, it's gutsy, and I think it works.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
it doesn't work to win the game. I think it works to maintain the balance, actually, because the position was sharpening up so much.
yeah, but this is suddenly far from a draw, because suddenly either Black's pawn on the A file is going to run through and win the game, or White's knight in the corner, which looks weirdly placed, is going to come back and take Black's g-pawn, and White will have 2 running past pawns on the other flank. Suddenly a draw is maybe not the most likely result. The pawn has pushed. This is stopped, prevented from advancing by White's rook. I mean, it's anyone's game now. White's king could get greedy, step up the board and take a pawn. The White king could also step back and attack this black knight.
Got to do that. Take the pawn. First of all, repeat the position. This is always good technique.
Gain 10 seconds on the clock. After every
Exactly. And now
position.
put the king back to where it came from and then grab the pawn.
Yeah, but there's also an argument to be made for grabbing the other pawn. White's rook can come and take the black A pawn. The problem is White's knight in the corner is trapped, so you have to calculate that one quite carefully. I think you can get away with it. I just want to eliminate that that scary black pawn on A3. OK, first Pragg gives a check. Does this help? Unclear. The black king is kicked backwards.
And now the king comes forward. This is the definition of teamwork. And a big threat on the board of knight takes pawn. Meanwhile, the rook is guarding the dangerous A-pawn.
Yeah, it just feels like Pragg is the one putting the pressure on. At any moment, Pragg can bail out, even at the cost of White's knight. As long as he gets rid of 2 black pawns, it's going to be a draw. A rook and knight alone cannot beat a rook. So if one of the 2 sides gives up their knight for the opposition 2 pawns, it's going to be a draw. But it's easier for Pragg to do that than for Anish. And look at this.
Whoa!
This is what I was talking about. Pragg is the one putting the pressure on, and Anish is cracking. Suddenly, the black knight is offside, and black's pawns, both of them are dropping. White's knight now swoops back.
Takes it with a check, and now the pawn can just advance, push the f-pawn, and now Anish losing.
Yeah.
What a turnaround.
He's definitely losing this game. All Pragg needs to do is push his 2 pawns. White's rook does a fantastic job of stopping black's pawn. It's game over. Black's knight is just so bad. Push your pawns. That's all you need to do. You can even just jump back into the centre with the white knight if you really want to centralise, but you can push either of the 2 white pawns right now, to be honest. Both of them work. Black is not... There we go. Black is not threatening to take this f3 pawn with the black rook because White's knight would jump back with a nasty fork. All sorts of forks in the air with these knights now, especially Black's king is vulnerable. Yeah. Pragg, what a player. He's going to go to a 2-0 advantage here. And that's because he refused to accept a draw, even in a dead drawn position, grinding it out, pressing even the tiniest advantage.
I just love the way he kept posing problems to Anish. He never made life simple. And the king moves, but now I'm expecting the pawn just simply to step forward.
Yep, White's f-pawn is now threatened, so why not step it forward? White's knight could also re-centralise itself, but this is simpler. Teamwork, again, with the pawns this time, protecting each other. And, of course, the computer says no, and whoa, Anish Giri, he found a really sneaky way to pin the white knight. And there was a threat there of Black's knight jumping back and taking a pawn due to this pin on the 6th rank.
But hang on a second, the A-pawn can now march forward.
It's getting scary. Maybe has Pragg let it slip?
He has let it slip, the most natural move.
I don't know if he has, because White's pawns are stepping as well. Okay, anything could happen here. White's pawns are very scary, only 3 steps away. Black's pawn's still under lock and key. Still, okay, now Pragg has defended everything. Those 2 knights are, not well placed at all, but they're doing a job. And White's knight especially is holding everything together. Black's knight can't get back in the game. There's a threat. White's rook wants to take that black A pawn. I think he's still got it, Pragg, but maybe Giri had a small opportunity there. I'm wondering what it was, but Giri looks devastated. He does not look like he believes in holding this one anymore. Step forward, 2 squares away, this G-pawn. Gary, the G-pawn, is going to promote. Black's knight too far away to stop it.
Yeah.
Game over. It's no way to defend now.
No, absolutely
Black has
no
no
way
coordination.
back.
And OK, he tries to get his knight back in the game, but all you need to do now as Pragg is to step forward one last time. A check. But, I mean, you could even maybe capture that knight with the rook, but no, simpler to move the king. A new queen is about to appear. Nothing to be done. Giri exhales. And he presses that resign button. Praggnanandhaa, or he's about to at least. Praggnanandhaa is going to take the win. A second win of the day.
Wow. Heartbreak for Anish. Giri losing 2 games in a row puts him in a must-win situation.